Magnus Carlsen is one of the best players of all time, but in 2002, he wasn't very well known. However, that didn't stop him from playing one of the most brilliant games I have ever seen. So Magnus Carlsen has the white pieces here in just a small tournament in Norway. As he was only 12 years old, but he was already rated around 2100, so pretty impressive. Magnus Carlsen opens with e4, his opponent goes e6, the French defense. This has a reputation as a very solid opening and a great response to e4, but can be a little bit boring. So here we go, d4, of course, if you can take the full center, you should, and then d5 by his opponent. This is the idea of the French, to strike back at the center with the d-pawn and sort of ask, what's your plans? You want to go for an exchange French? You're going to go super theoretical with the just knight c3, maybe allow the 1 hour, or are you going to push immediately? There's a lot of choices for white to do for. Man decides to go for knight d2, the Tarrasch variation. As the opponent responds knight f6, this is the main line. So we see e5, knight f to d7, Magnus goes knight g to f3, and his opponent immediately strikes back in the center, c5. So now this d-pawn is under threat, it's only defended once, and then black might start piling up pressure on this pawn quite quickly as Magnus defends it, c3, another benefit of the knight not being on c3, because obviously that's in the main line, but now with this knight d2 move, you block your bishop, but now you have the ability to play c3 and also black can't penny with the bishop, so we see knight c6, and then bishop to d3. So obviously, with your queen being blocked by all these pieces, it's very hard to defend this pawn. It's impossible, actually. Unless you want to move this knight, and you can allow things like c4, obviously a bishop wouldn't be there, but it can get very uncomfortable for white quickly. But if you want to sacrifice this pawn and play a bit more actively, you can put this bishop on d3, it's the main move in the Tarrasch, for a good reason, because the games that arise from it are very exciting. So queen b6, as we see, black quickly starts putting pressure on that pawn, but again, as we know, Magnus isn't going to defend it. So he goes castling, gambiting the d-pawn, which sort of, I would say, maybe slightly out of character for Magnus. Maybe young Magnus just a bit wild back in the day and decides to gambit his d-pawn for activity. This isn't like something he's made up on the spot or anything. This was quite well online, but I honestly thought this was more known these days, proven by the engines to be quite good. I'm not even sure if it was such a big thing in 2002. So his opponent obliges, capturing, Magnus captures back, and here we go, knight takes d4, can't take back, so Magnus takes, and now you're in a bit of a conundrum, because the bishop is hit, and your e5 pawn is under attack. So how do you defend both? Well, there's only one move in the position. Magnus, of course, finds it. Knight to f3, hits the queen, defends the pawn, and uninterposes the knight in front of the queen. So the knight was blocking the queen's view of the bishop. Now it's revealed, so the queen just slides back to b3. Magnus goes queen to a4. A very odd-looking move, a strange move even. But the idea is quite clear. So if this knight gets to c5, it can be quite annoying. Hits your bishop, black starts getting active, and after you sacrifice the pawn, you need to keep your initiative up. So Magnus decides to pin this knight and make sure it doesn't get into the game. And also this queen can swing over to the other side of the board at a moment's notice. So we see queen to b4, of course. Bloody French players always going for a draw. It seems a little bit of a drawish opening. This is heinous. Obviously the endgame's not very good. Not very much winning chances for white. Even if you are Magnus Carlsen, I guess he wasn't good at endgames back in this day. But Magnus plays the best move. Queen back to c2. Again, gets chased around by the queen. Slides it away. And then bishop to e7. Black prepares castling, thinks he's out of the woods. Magnus just simply responds bishop to e3, developing, hits the queen, and the queen has to move out of the way. And Magnus isn't done creating threats. He goes bishop to g5, threatening to capture, which will end black can have to recapture with his king, and when his king's stuck in the center, white can start quite a big attack. But apparently, I was checking with the engine, and this actually allows black to completely equalize, so black can in fact just take this bishop, which I guess Magnus knew, and you have this move knight takes g5, recapture with the knight, and has a lot of good pressure. So if black decides to castle, there's all sorts of Greek gifts and ideas. I think black loses on the spot here because of like a Greek gift sort of idea. So of course you can't go for that. But if you just play a quiet move, h6, the knight is forced to retreat and you actually have nothing here. Very little compensation, so a little bit of a mistake from Magnus there. Of course his opponent didn't actually find that engine line and just went queen back to d8, of course hoping to recapture with the queen and avoid the king losing his castling rights. So Magnus just goes queen to e3, defending that bishop, which he takes with a knight, and then queen to e7. So Magnus goes rook a to c1, and his opponent plays h6, kicking the knight away. And I mean, what would you play here? I mean, probably knight f3, right? Maybe you're feeling a bit weird that day. Maybe you could go knight h3. I mean, what else is there really to do? But young Magnus thought of something else. He found something different. He's noticed that a piece was very loosely defended, and he can exploit that by playing queen takes a7. Capturing a pawn. You think, Magnus has just blundered. He's an absolute idiot. Can't you just take that queen? But if we take the queen, one very key piece becomes undefended, this bishop. You think, how's that a key piece? It's not even doing anything. It's looking at 2 pieces. Well, the thing is, it's almost the last thing on the back rank. So if you were to take that, you actually have to block with the queen. And if you block with the queen, you can take with the rook. King is forced to take. And after that, you notice there's a fork here on f7, so Magnus would take. The king goes anywhere, really. And you capture the rook, and you actually are up 4 points of material. So a nice sequence there. Of course, black can grab, but being up a piece in this endgame is going to be very easy to convert. So Magnus would not have struggled there. His opponent tried to find a more fighting response and just went rook to b8. Of course, rook is now defended by the knight. Thinks Magnus, you've won a pawn. What's your idea here? And I guess maybe saw this continuation as well. Magnus insisted on sacrificing his queen, and now black has to take back with a knight. And again, this bishop is just so weak. So this is what happened in the game. Takes, king moves out of the way, so you don't have to give up your queen, but then you lose a rook. So he's up 4 points of material. And also, if you want to take this knight with the queen or the pawn, Magnus will simply recapture black's knight, so he'll still be ahead 4 points of material. So Magnus' opponent decided to play knight to f3, getting his piece into the game, trying to play active. Of course, this e5 pawn is extremely weak. Magnus simply drops his knight back and is trying to consolidate this material advantage. Obviously, in the endgame now, the queen can be very tricky in these low piece endgames. If your king gets too exposed, there can be a lot of forced draws or forced repetitions that can lead to a draw of the game. So, of course, Magnus needs to be careful to avoid all that. So f6, trying to get some play on the center, break it up. Of course, no point. Removing the f-pawn is no issue now. The king is on d7 or the endgame. So we see bishop to b5, pinning the knight, f takes e5, and then Magnus exchanges further. So he captures, and now you can see the material advantage is just up a knight. Because 2 rooks versus the queen can be very equal and tricky. But if you coordinate the rooks well, and also with the extra knight, this is not going to be any trouble. So he goes knight takes e5 check. King moves down, of course. Just defends it with the rook. Very cool, calm, and collected for Magnus here. No need to worry. And the thing is, when your opponent has a queen, I mean, it's almost hard to play with the queen, especially in situations like this when you look down material, obviously. But you just feel like you're moving the same piece over and over again. You can't do much, and you're just waiting for the side with the more material, which is overwhelming. So we just see king to c7. King goes back. Of course, you're not going to take the knight. Magnus keeps creating threats, keeps moving forward, but first decides to make sure he doesn't get back rank mated. g3, very principled, and we see queen to b4. Trying to pick up some of these pawns at the queen side. Of course, Magnus defends, rook to e2, then d4. Now, it looks a little bit tricky, you know? It's a bit scary. Are these pawns going to promote black actually to passport in the center of the board? This rook is almost completely out of the game, and all you have is a knight and a rook versus a queen to try and stop this pawn, so bit dicey. But Magnus decides to go rook to d8, sacrificing a rook. But it's not really a true sacrifice because you can win the material back instantly. Of course, if black decides to take that rook, you will just go knight to c6, and your opponent's probably going to resign because after you move the king, you pick up the queen, and now you're up 2 pieces against the king, or a knight and a rook against king. Obviously, I think even a 300 elo player could probably win that game. So instead, the guy, Magnus' opponent just moves the queen to b5, doesn't capture the rook. He's hitting the knight. He's also still hitting this pawn, but not too many moves for black here. So you see rook d7 check, supported by the knight. King moves out of the way, and then rook to e4. Now this pawn is threatened. If you want to defend it, it's a bit tricky. So of course c5, the natural move played by his opponent, and he goes rook to f4. Now this forces black's hand. You think, well, what wants to infiltrate? Well, the thing is, with this rook protected, the king is pinned on the back rank. So this is threatening checkmate in one. There's actually no way to get out of this apart from sacrifice your queen. So black sacks his queen back, but this time it's not for any material gain. You're only losing a queen for 2 pieces. So Magnus recaptures, takes, and then actually after his opponent took the queen, he realizes in the endgame just down a full rook, and Magnus' opponent here resigned the game. So beautiful game from Magnus Carlsen. And guys, if you're liking the content so far, make sure to subscribe. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. Maybe leave a comment or a like. It really helps me out. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.